Unaware she was the secret billionaire CEO of his $70 family company he worked for, Daniel Hayes walked into their anniversary dinner, not with roses, not with gratitude, but with divorce papers, believing he was trading an ordinary wife for a glamorous new mistress who promised him status, desire, and a glittering future he thought Emery could never provide. Emery Hayes, the woman he had held through sleepless nights in their small apartment long before wealth, sat across from him with quiet eyes that carried storms he could not see, storms forged from a legacy he never cared to understand. He believed he was rising, but he had no idea he was walking away from empires, from inheritance, from a fortune with his name already written across it. He just never asked why executives bowed slightly when she entered a room, or why her signature alone could approve company mergers. He believed he was the one leaving her with nothing, but the truth waiting beyond those divorce papers would flip his entire world upside down. And when Emery stepped out of that restaurant, not shattered but silent, the man who picked her up in the black limousine shocked him so deeply, the ground beneath his identity shifted forever. Raising the question, who was Emery really? Why was a billionaire investor waiting for her? And what would she do next that would crush Daniel and his mistress beyond redemption? The restaurant lights reflected in Emery's pupils like twin moons as Daniel slid the envelope across the linen tablecloth. The candle between them flickered, bending as if the flame itself recoiled from what lay between husband and wife. Emery's fingers did not tremble. That alone unsettled Daniel more than he cared to admit. "Happy anniversary," he said, trying to sound firm, unmoved, dominant. But the words came out thin, brittle, like glass stretched too far. Emery looked at the envelope, then back at him. Her tone was lighter than breath. "Divorce papers." He tried to smile, but it was too sharp. "We both know this marriage has been over. I'm moving on." "With Alyssa," she replied, naming the mistress without hesitation, without emotion. No accusations, no raised voice, just acknowledgement. Like weather she had already forecasted and prepared for. Daniel shifted, uncomfortable with how calm she was. He had expected tears. A breakdown, maybe even begging. He didn't understand that he had just approached a queen believing she was a pawn. "I deserve happiness," he insisted, chest lifting as if his decision made him powerful. Emery studied him gently, like she was memorizing his face for a goodbye he didn't know he was giving. "You think happiness is what you're walking toward?" Silence thickened. Somewhere behind them, a waiter poured champagne for another couple. Bubbles rising like ghosts of dreams that once belonged to them. Daniel pushed the papers closer. "Sign them. Tonight." Emery held his gaze for a long moment, and then she spoke. Soft, devastating, prophetic. "Daniel, are you sure you want to let go of me?" His pulse stumbled. He didn't know why. Because something in her voice, something in those calm eyes, hinted not at loss, but at consequences. The drive home should have felt victorious, but Daniel found himself gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual, knuckles whitening beneath the dashboard lights. Alyssa sat in the passenger seat, smiling like she'd won a throne. Yet even she noticed the stillness in him, a silence that clung like fog. "She took it well," Alyssa said, voice coated in triumph. "Almost too well." Daniel didn't look at her. "She always holds things in. She'll break later." But a thin thread of doubt pulled at him. A memory of a younger Emery sitting cross-legged on their apartment floor, sorting job applications late at night while he slept. She wasn't weak then. She wasn't weak tonight. Had she ever been weak at all? Alyssa placed her hand on his thigh. "Tomorrow we tell HR you want her position. You'll finally have the power you deserve." Her words fed him like sugar. Sweet, quick, empty. Power, he thought. Yes, finally. He pictured himself rising through corporate floors like an elevator ascending without limit. He imagined corner offices, investors greeting him first. He didn't notice the one flaw in his vision. He assumed Emery held nothing he couldn't take. Meanwhile, Emery stood outside the restaurant as a black limousine rolled to the curb. Her reflection appeared in its dark window. Fragile shoulders, calm eyes, breath steady. But beneath the quiet surface, a history trembled like the deep parts of an ocean unseen. door opened and Lucas Grant stepped out, tall enough to cast her in shadow. His voice was low, familiar. "You're composed. I was expecting tears." "Tears would be for someone I lost," Emery replied. "I haven't lost anything." Lucas's jaw flexed. Pride, anger, something deeper. "Then it's time." Emery exhaled slowly. In her mind, a flashback unfolded. Her father, stern yet loving, teaching her to read stock reports before she learned to cook. Her mother reminding her that kindness and power could coexist if worn with wisdom. Her father's funeral. The boardroom whispers, Daniel's supportive arm around her. The promise she made to lead silently until ready. She had built entire wings of Hayes Global behind a curtain Daniel never bothered to look past. Lucas opened the car door wider. "Your move begins now." She nodded once, stepping inside with grace that belonged to someone born into legacy, not married into it. The engine hummed, pulling them away into the city's night, while Daniel parked at his modest apartment hours later, unaware that the empire beneath his feet was shifting like sand. As he lay beside Alyssa that night, drifting into sleep, one question lingered like a ghost. Why didn't Emery break? Why didn't she beg? And why did Daniel suddenly feel like the one left behind? He didn't know that by sunrise, the first thread of his future would snap, because morning would come not with celebration, but with reckoning. Morning sunlight washed over the city like gold poured from the sky. But in Daniel's apartment, the air felt cold, tense, unfinished. He awoke to the rhythmic tap of Alyssa typing aggressively beside him, laptop open, already drafting emails to HR and department heads. Her version of conquest. She wore confidence like perfume, strong and suffocating. "Today's the day," she said without looking up. "We make our move. Once she signs, you'll take her place in corporate operations. Then eventually, CEO," Daniel finished, the word rolling off his tongue like champagne. But inside, something stung. CEO. The title felt too heavy, too high. Emery had always known how to carry weight. He had never asked how. He assumed their world was shaped in equal halves, but her silence had been a shield, not absence. A knock at the door interrupted the fantasy. Alyssa frowned. "We're not expecting anyone." Daniel opened the door expecting a courier, a neighbor, but instead stood Mr. Whitman, the company's chief legal officer, silver-haired and stone-faced. He rarely visited anyone outside of board summons. His presence alone carried consequences. "Good morning, Daniel." His tone was polite but cool. "HR requires your attendance at 9 a.m. sharp." Daniel blinked. "HR? For what?" "I haven't filed anything yet." Whitman handed him a sealed document. Daniel's heart pounded as he tore it open. A meeting notice. No explanation. Just a directive. And at the bottom, signed in looping cursive, he recognized from birthday cards and love notes. Emery Hayes. Alyssa stepped behind him, trying to read over his shoulder. "What is this? Why is she signing HR directives? She's just..." Daniel turned his head slowly. "She shouldn't have the authority." But she did. And that single quiet fact gnawed him like termites in foundation wood. He left the apartment hurriedly, Alyssa trailing behind, heels striking pavement like war drums. Traffic blurred past while his mind ran faster. Why HR? Why formal documents? Why involvement from legal? Something wasn't aligning. He had expected tears, softness, acquiescence, not signatures, not power, not legal summons. At 8:59 a.m., he entered the HR floor. Employees stared, not with judgment, with caution, as if they knew something that he didn't. Ms. Harrow from HR handed him another envelope, white, weighty, dangerous. "You'll want privacy for this." He opened it. Daniel's breath vanished. Inside lay a copy of the divorce papers, signed. But attached was something else, something terrifying, an official marital property forfeiture agreement. All claims relinquished. No contest, no negotiation. She had let him go. Completely. Alyssa smiled too quickly. Perfect. She surrendered. But Daniel's stomach twisted. Emery didn't surrender. She executed. Because for her to release everything so easily meant only one thing. She had everything to release, and he had nothing left to take. The ground shifted beneath him. Somewhere across the city, Emery rode in a limousine with Lucas, calm as dawn, the true beginning of her ascension already unfolding. And Daniel, unknowingly, had just stepped into the first stage of his own downfall. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt longer than any commute Daniel had taken in his life. His reflection in the polished steel wavered, not from movement, but from doubt. He straightened his tie twice, smoothed his hair once, trying to reclaim the confidence he walked with just the night before. But confidence built on assumption cracks easily, and Daniel could feel every fracture. Alyssa clung to his arm as they exited onto the 38th floor, high heels clicking sharply across marble arranged in patterns he'd seen for years, but never truly observed. The company crest, the Hayes crest, gleamed beneath their feet, a lion crowned, one paw gripping a sword, the other resting on a book. Emery once traced that crest with pride during a museum visit, telling him softly, "My father chose knowledge and strength together." Daniel hadn't understood then. He understood less now. As they passed through the glass double doors leading into the board corridor, employees paused conversations mid-sentence. Eyes tracked them, not curious, not admiring, reading them, as if watching fate unfold and knowing exactly where it would lead. They reached the main conference room, a circular table polished to mirror perfection, leather seats forming a ring of power. Daniel expected to take a seat near the middle, where senior executives usually sat. But before he could move, someone cleared their throat. It was Lucas, standing at the head of the room, beside her. Emery. No clipboard, no guest badge, no employee lanyard, no timid smiles or soft edges. She stood like a monarch come to claim her throne. Tailored black suit, hair pinned high, diamond-studded pen in hand like a scepter. She didn't need a crown. Authority radiated from her like heat from fire. Daniel froze mid-step. Alyssa's breath caught beside him. Lucas spoke first. Voice deep, steady, final. "Thank you all for gathering. Today we initiate a structural transition for Hayes Global." Daniel found his voice. Why is he addressing the board? He's an investor, not leadership. A silence swept the room. One of the directors folded his hands. Mr. Grant owns 24% equity. Combined with Mrs. Hayes' majority shares, they control executive authority. Mrs. Hayes, not Emery, Mrs. Hayes. Daniel's vision blurred. Majority? His throat closed. She doesn't hold majority. The company belongs to... Emery's eyes locked onto his, soft with something that twisted like a blade. It always belonged to me, Daniel. 5 words, a sentence sharp enough to split history. Alyssa stepped back as if distance could undo reality. You're saying you're the Emery didn't raise her voice. She didn't need volume. I am the CEO. I have been since my father passed. I kept the title private to observe loyalty, character, and patience in the people closest to me. Her gaze fell on Daniel, not hateful, worse, disappointed. You showed me none. The world swayed. Daniel gripped the back of a chair for stability, pulse hammering like a trapped heart. He remembered the HR letter, the forfeiture agreement, the signatures. The company crest beneath his feet. He hadn't divorced a wife. He'd severed himself from a kingdom. Lucas turned a page in the folder before him. Meeting agenda, item 1, reassignment and termination review. Daniel staggered. Alyssa whispered, Daniel, what have we done? He didn't answer, because Emery wasn't finished speaking, and the next words she delivered would decide everything. The conference room felt colder than AC could ever make it. Daniel stood motionless, heart pounding like fists against a door he wished he could lock. Emery moved with calm precision, each gesture so measured it made him feel sloppy, unprepared, naked. She took the CEO seat, her seat, and when she did, every director aligned their body language toward her, not him. He watched decades of legacy shift into place like puzzle pieces he never realized were missing. Lucas placed a folder before her. She slid it forward, letting the papers fan open like wings preparing to take flight. Before we proceed, Emery said softly, I want clarity, transparency, truth. Her voice held warmth once, the warmth that lit small apartments and morning pancakes. But today it was forged into steel. Daniel swallowed hard. Emery, we can talk in private. No, she interrupted, not unkind, but unmovable. You wanted our ending public, so it will be public. Alyssa's face paled. She squeezed Daniel's arm as if her fingers could stop the avalanche. Emery's eyes never left his. For 10 years, you believed I was average, ordinary, less. Daniel flinched, not from volume, but from accuracy. And I let you believe it, she continued, because love to me meant being chosen even when crowns were hidden. A memory slipped uninvited into Daniel's mind. Emery turning off lights in their small apartment to save energy, saying softly, "Luxury can wait. Love can't." He thought she meant poverty. He never imagined she controlled billions while wearing thrift store jeans. The directors listened like audience before a verdict. Lucas leaned back, arms crossed, gaze sharp enough to cut marble. Emery picked up a photograph from the folder, her and her father taken years before. She placed it where Daniel could see, the same lion crest beside them, embossed behind her father's chair. "You worked for Hayes Global," she said. "You never asked who Hayes was to me. You never wondered why I never worried about bills, why promotions came easily to you, why my signatures moved mountains." Daniel felt his chest compress. He wanted to deny, defend, rewrite history, but every memory now returned with new meaning. Emery paying rent early. Emery covering debt with a calm smile. Emery saying, "Don't worry, everything will be okay," like someone who didn't hope, but knew. Lucas spoke, tone final as a closing bell. Per her authority as CEO, Mrs. Hayes is restructuring leadership positions. Termination reviews begin now. Daniel's voice broke. Termination? Emery didn't look angry. She looked resigned, like someone who wished forgiveness could replace consequence. "You left our marriage for power," she said, never realizing power already waited beside you every night. Her words struck deeper than rage could, deeper than betrayal. Daniel felt the floor tilt beneath him, reality rearranging like glass shattering in reverse. He had not just lost a wife, he had freed a ruler. Emery closed the folder with a soft click, the sound of doors sealing shut. "Next item," she said. "Daniel Hayes, employment review." And no one in the room breathed. Daniel lowered himself into the nearest chair like his legs no longer remembered how to hold him. The room watched, not with pity, not with malice, but with an uncomfortable awareness that they were witnessing history rewrite itself in real time. Alyssa stood frozen behind him, nails digging into her palm, her confidence leaking like a punctured tire. Emery's voice remained steady, composed, heartbreakingly gentle. "This isn't vengeance, Daniel. It's accountability. And accountability is the currency of leadership." She turned slightly, addressing the board, though her eyes remained fixed on him. For 10 years, he served this company. He worked hard. He delivered results. But he also acted without integrity. A pause, long enough to make breathing difficult. He betrayed the one person he believed powerless. A director cleared his throat. "Mrs. Hayes, are you recommending termination?" Emery didn't answer immediately. Her stillness was louder than any sentence. Behind that stillness lived memories. Their first shared paycheck, burnt kitchen dinners, the night she told him she was scared to lose him, unaware she would later lose him willingly. Daniel leaned forward, desperate. "Emery, listen to me. I made mistakes, yes, but don't do this. I can fix us. I can fix everything." She blinked slowly. "You can't fix something you never valued." Alyssa stepped in then, voice sharp like shattered glass. "This is ridiculous. You can't fire him just because you're bitter about the divorce. We're getting married. He doesn't need you or this company." The room exhaled, not loudly but collectively, as if her words were a punch thrown in a cathedral. Emery finally looked at Alyssa. Not harsh, not cruel, just aware. "Marriage built from betrayal cannot stand. It will collapse under the weight of truth." She returned her gaze to Daniel, and truth has arrived. Lucas tapped the table once, calling attention. Motion to vote on reassignment. Daniel Hayes, removal from senior management and reallocation to entry-level operations pending compliance review. It felt unreal, like someone had unplugged the world for a second. Daniel gripped the chair arms. Entry-level? You're demoting me to the bottom? Emery inhaled, exhaled, a controlled release. If you believe you deserve the top, earn your way up again. Without shortcuts, without stepping on love to get higher. His vision burned red. Pride flared like a wounded animal backed into a corner. I was supposed to be CEO. You said I could rise. No, Emery said softly. I said I would support your growth. You replaced growth with greed. Silence dropped like a curtain. Then, the vote. Hands lifted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Every director. Unanimous. Daniel's body went cold, hands trembling. Alyssa's cheeks drained of color. She stepped back, letting her distance speak louder than loyalty ever had. Security approached, but Emery raised her hand. Escort Alyssa out. Daniel stays. Gasps rippled across the room. Alyssa stared at Daniel, not with love, but calculation. Call me when you have power again. She left without looking back. Daniel closed his eyes, because for the first time he saw the truth. He wasn't losing everything. He had already lost it. Security guided Alyssa out through the heavy glass doors that sealed behind her with a soft hydraulic whisper. A sound Daniel would remember, like a guillotine. The room settled, chairs creaking, air thickening as the eyes that once admired him now observed him with a distant professionalism. Respect, like wealth, belonged to Emery now. Maybe it always had. He sat small in a room where he once imagined standing tall. Emery clasped her hands together, composure regal yet weighted with history. Daniel, you are not being escorted out. Not yet, she said as if granting mercy. I want you to understand the magnitude of what you walked away from. Not so you suffer, but so you see. He swallowed. Why? Why not just fire me and be done? She turned her gaze to the windows, where the skyline stretched like a crown of steel and glass. Because I loved you, she said quietly, and part of me needs closure. Truth, not silence. Those words hit harder than any demotion. She loved him, past tense, a funeral wrapped in softer tone. Lucas passed another file forward. Daniel noticed how even men who commanded millions deferred to him, but only after they deferred to her. A hierarchy he never understood was now painfully clear. Inside is the foundation you ignored, Lucas said. Her patents, expansions she spearheaded, acquisitions she closed. While you slept, she built. Daniel's fingers trembled as he reached for the file. Names of companies he recognized, subsidiaries he assumed belonged to other owners, all linked to one name, Emery Whitmore Hayes. Flashback rolled unbidden. Late nights she'd sit awake reviewing documents he assumed were charity work. He'd kiss her forehead and say, "Come to bed, babe, the money will work itself out." She smiled then, small and secret, replying, "Money never works itself out. People do." He never listened. He thought her wisdom poetic, not literal. He opened the file. Every merger, every project he'd boasted about at bars existed because she quietly approved funding from the shadows. He hadn't climbed the company. He'd been carried. Emery watched realization break through him like light beneath cracking stone. "I never wanted you to feel belittled by my success," she said softly, "so I let you grow at your pace. I wanted to rise with you." He choked on a breath. "Then why hide it? Why live like we were broke?" She breathed, a sound layered with years. "Power reveals people. I needed to know whether you loved me or potential wealth, and when Alyssa appeared," her voice wavered only slightly. "You answered that question." His knees weakened. "Emery, I didn't know. I didn't." She raised a hand, not to silence, but to steady herself. "You didn't ask to know." Another truth, another blade. The boardroom lights hummed overhead, indifferent to heartbreak. Outside, the city continued unaware. Inside, Daniel's world shrank to the space between them, a gulf of choices, years, and broken possibilities. And then Emery said the words that would shape everything that followed. You chased power. Now earn humility. Her decision wasn't punishment. It was transformation. Whether he survived it depended on what he became next. The boardroom adjourned slowly, chairs scraping back like the shifting of tectonic plates. Directors filed out through the double doors, leaving Daniel alone with Emery and Lucas. The past, the present, and the unnerving future standing in a single silent triangle. Daniel remained seated because standing felt like claiming ground he no longer owned. Lucas closed the final folder and spoke first. Daniel, tomorrow you report to the distribution warehouse for entry-level reassignment. You'll work under Mr. Kellen. His tone was matter-of-fact, but not cruel. Lucas was delivering consequence without gloating, which somehow stung deeper. Daniel blinked. Warehouse, as in loading? Packing? He could almost hear his pride crack like thin ice. Learning where foundations begin, Lucas replied, eyes steady. Every empire starts from the ground floor. If you wish to climb again, climb from where value is born, not where power hides. Emery said nothing. Her silence was not absence. It was presence, heavy and full. Daniel's voice came out thinner than the man he once pretended to be. So you're stripping me back to the bottom? No, Emery said gently. You stripped yourself. I'm only removing what you no longer deserve. His throat tightened. He stared at her, not as a woman scorned, but as the leader she was, precise, unshakable, almost painfully calm. She had changed without changing. She always possessed this strength. He simply never looked long enough to see it. She gathered her documents and stood. The movement was elegant, final. We shared a decade, Daniel. Let this next one be your redemption, not your destruction. He expected anger. He got grace instead, which was far harder to face. When Emery reached the door, she paused, a beat of hesitation, a softness that had not yet died. She turned back to him, eyes dimmed by something close to grief. I prayed you would fight for us, she whispered, not replace us. Daniel had no answer, no defense, no courage to reshape truth. She left. Lucas lingered for a moment longer, studying Daniel with the quiet assessment of a man who understood power intimately. She grieved you long before you betrayed her. She just never let you see the funeral. The words hit like a punch where remorse lives. Then Lucas followed Emery out, closing the door with a soft click, the sound of two worlds separating. Daniel sat alone. He thought of their first apartment, peeling paint, laughter at midnight, Emery wearing oversized shirts and burning pancakes while singing off-key. He thought of her fingers tracing the company crest years ago, smiles secretive. He thought of moments he could have asked more, listened more, loved more. He hadn't lost his position today. He had discovered he never deserved it. Outside the glass walls of the skyscraper, life moved on. Taxis honking, sunlight glittering across towers built by hands he never thanked. Tomorrow he would report to the warehouse, not as the rising executive he believed himself to be, but as a beginner, and in that coming humiliation, perhaps an unseen rebirth waited. The next morning arrived with no limousine, no tailored suit, no polished recognition waiting at the office entrance. Instead, Daniel stood outside the warehouse of Hayes Global, a massive industrial complex he had only ever seen in quarterly reports, never visited in person. Forklifts beeped, workers yelled instructions across concrete floors, crates taller than men lined corridors like silent judges. This was not an executive hall. This was the spine of the empire, the place where wealth had muscle instead of polish. A burly supervisor approached, clipboard under one arm, coffee in hand. His voice carried gravel. You Daniel Hayes? Daniel forced a nod. Yes, I know who you were, the man cut in. Here, you're a trainee. Follow instructions, work your shift, earn your place. Simple? Daniel swallowed the ego rising in his throat. Yes, simple. He wasn't used to taking orders, especially without titles cushioning his pride. Yet he followed Mr. Kellen through aisles of inventory, machines humming like distant thunder. Workers pushed pallets, lifted boxes, checked barcodes, sweat slicked foreheads. These people built the company from the ground up. Literally. They didn't wait for mergers or boardroom votes to make progress. They moved progress with their hands. Daniel felt out of place, but more painfully, he felt unnecessary. Kellen handed him gloves and pointed toward a conveyor line. Start here. Scan, label, load. One mistake slows everyone down. Daniel nodded, then misaligned the first box within seconds. A worker beside him sighed loudly, correcting it. Daniel mumbled an apology. You better keep up, new guy, the man said, not unkind, but with honest expectation. Hours crawled, sweat soaked into Daniel's shirt, muscles burning in places he didn't know existed. He missed lunch because he refused to fall behind. Pride was once his armor. Now hunger was his teacher. And somewhere around hour 6, he stared at his shaking hands and realized he had never worked this hard for anything he took pride in. Not really. When shift ended, he sat on a crate outside, legs trembling. His phone buzzed. Alyssa. You done? I hope HR starts reinstating your privileges soon. We can't live like this forever. He stared at the message. No encouragement, no empathy, only expectation. He typed slowly. They didn't fire me. They reassigned me. 3 dots blinked, disappeared, blinked again. Warehouse. You're joking, she replied. Call me when they fix it. No support, just inconvenience. He pocketed the phone and exhaled shakily. The metal crate beneath him was cold, unyielding, like reality itself. Inside the warehouse, overhead lights dimmed for closing. Daniel watched workers laugh as they left together. Camaraderie earned through sweat, not hierarchy. They were tired, but fulfilled. He was exhausted, but empty. Across the city, Emery sat in her penthouse office overlooking the skyline, reviewing reports Daniel never cared to learn. Her phone buzzed once. Lucas checking in. She smiled faintly, then turned back to work. Her world moved forward without him. Daniel stared at the darkening sky. Humility hurt more than demotion, but it also cleared the fog from his vision. And for the first time, he wondered what kind of man he might become if he learned instead of assuming, listened instead of believing he deserved. Tomorrow the warehouse awaited again, and maybe so did redemption. Daniel returned to the warehouse the next morning with sore muscles, bruised ego, and a determination he barely recognized. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about titles or corner offices. He was thinking about keeping pace, earning respect, and showing up. Something Emery had done quietly for a decade while he admired himself in reflections she polished. Kellen handed him a pallet list. You kept going yesterday. Didn't whine. Good sign. Those 7 words meant more than any executive compliment he'd ever received. By mid-shift, Daniel's movements grew smoother. He scanned barcodes without fumbling, balanced boxes with quicker reflexes, even cracked a tired smile when a coworker joked about his messy tape lines. Something unfamiliar bloomed in him. Not glory, not triumph. Belonging. During break, he sat beside a worker named Reggie, who sipped water from a dented metal bottle. You were that office guy, right? Reggie asked. Daniel nodded slowly. I thought I was climbing to the top. Reggie wiped sweat from his brow. Climbing ain't the same as being carried. The words hit like truth Emery might have spoken. Daniel hesitated, then asked a question he never once considered before. A small spark of change. What do you all think of the company? Really? Reggie chuckled. We keep it running, but no one up there knows our names. Think that'll ever change? Daniel stared at his gloves. It should. Reggie shrugged. Talk is easy. Change is heavy, like those crates. He pointed to the towering pallets nearby. Pick one up or let it crush you. Metaphor disguised in sweat-stained humor. Daniel picked it up. Later that afternoon, during a forklift transfer, a young worker slipped, just enough for disaster to bloom. Instinct cut through thought. Daniel lunged, grabbing the edge of the falling crate, stabilizing it inches from crushing the worker's leg. His arms shook violently from the weight, but he held on until help arrived. Kellen approached, inspecting the near accident. You reacted fast, the supervisor said. You saved his leg. Daniel exhaled shakily. I just moved. Didn't think. Thinking is slow, Kellen replied. Responsibility is reaction. You learning that? Responsibility, a word Emery carried like skin. As the shift ended, Daniel remained behind, staring at the crate he saved. For the first time, he felt the weight of leadership, not from the top looking down, but from under the load holding others up. His phone buzzed again. Alyssa, are you coming over? I'm bored. He didn't answer. Instead, another thought formed, slow and unsettling. Why did Emery fight alone while he slept? That night, Daniel went home not to Alyssa, but to silence. He stood in his bathroom mirror. No suit, no polish. Just a man stripped to bone truth. He looked at himself the way Emery must have once looked at him, hoping he would rise, not drift. He whispered to his own reflection, I failed her. And for the first time, grief, not pride, filled his chest. This wasn't the end of consequence. It was the beginning of reckoning. Daniel stood outside his old apartment, the one he once shared with Emery, hands trembling as he pressed the buzzer. He hadn't been here since the night he sealed their fate with an envelope. The hallway smelled like polished wood and memory. His heart hammered, not from fear of being rejected, but from realizing he deserved rejection. The door opened. Emery stood there, hair loose around her shoulders, barefoot, wearing a soft gray sweater. No diamond authority, no CEO armor. Just the woman he once loved in the quiet morning light. For a moment, neither spoke. He finally exhaled. Can I talk to you? She stepped aside without hesitation. Not forgiveness, not invitation, but closure waiting to be spoken. Daniel entered slowly, eyes landing on familiar things. The couch where they watched movies eating cheap noodles. The wall where he once taped their anniversary photo. The table where she graded documents he never bothered to ask about. The life he treated as small was larger than he ever understood. Emery sat on the armchair like she'd been expecting this moment for a long time. I'm listening. Daniel breathed deeply, words heavier than any box he lifted at the warehouse. I came to say what I never said when you needed it. I came to apologize. The silence after his words didn't comfort. It tested. I failed you, he continued, voice raw. You carried us. You built an empire. And I never even asked how. I was blind to your strength because it made me feel smaller. I let pride make me cruel. Emery's eyes shimmered. Not with tears, but reflections of moments that once mattered. I didn't need your success, she replied softly. I needed partnership. I needed you to ask questions, to see me. The hidden pieces of me weren't meant to be secrets. They were opportunities to grow together. Daniel lowered his head. And instead, I wanted to rise alone. You wanted to rise fast, she corrected gently. Growth without foundation collapses. You didn't build, you expected to be handed. Her voice carried no venom, only truth polished with pain. Daniel looked up, eyes burning. Is it too late? Emery closed her hands in her lap, a habit Daniel remembered from nights she had to steady her own hope. Too late for us? Yes. The softness of her tone made the word more final than anger ever could. But not too late for you. He blinked rapidly. You really mean that? She nodded. You're learning humility. That's more valuable than a corner office. If you keep growing, you might rebuild yourself into a man even I could respect again. Respect, not love, not marriage. A second chance at character, not romance. Daniel exhaled, painful but cleansing. Thank you for being honest, for being more than I deserved. Emery stood, walking him to the door. Daniel, you once held something priceless without knowing its weight, but there's freedom in learning. He paused in the doorway, one final question suspended between them. What now? She gave a small, bittersweet smile, one that held history, loss, and possibility. Now, she said gently, you climb, not for me, for you. Daniel left, not defeated, but altered, because for the first time he wanted to rise without stepping on anyone to do it. Days at the warehouse turned into weeks, and Daniel began to understand the rhythm of honest labor, not as punishment, but as education. He arrived early, stayed late, lifted without complaint, listened when corrected. He learned names, not titles, stories, not resumes. Reggie talked about his daughter's school fees. Kellen mentioned his aging mother's medical bills. Their ambitions were not built on greed, but survival, dignity, pride earned with sweat, not signatures. Daniel found something unfamiliar growing in him: patience. One afternoon, the warehouse team faced a crisis. A delayed shipment meant hundreds of packages backed up, threatening national delivery schedules. Panic rippled through the floor. Kellen barked orders, reassigning teams, but tension rose like heat. Daniel saw men frantic, hands shaking, progress collapsing under pressure. It reminded him of boardrooms, but without polished lies to hide behind. He stepped forward. "We break it into 3 stations," Daniel said. "One group sorts, one labels, one loads. No overlap, no confusion. Assembly line efficiency." Kellen turned skeptical. "You sure?" Daniel nodded. "The warehouse is a heart. If blood clots, you don't push harder, you create flow." Kellen stared, then shouted directions. Soon the floor moved in organized waves, boxes flying from hands to belts to trucks. What would have taken hours finished in one. Workers cheered, clapping each other's backs. Daniel didn't stand above them. He stood among them. Pride filled him. Not ego, but purpose. Later, Kellen approached privately. "You think operational now, not entitled. Keep this up. You'll move up. For the right reasons this time." Daniel smiled. Small. Real. He walked home exhausted but fulfilled, stopping at a bridge overlooking the city. Cars glimmered like rivered light below, skyscrapers reaching like ambitions sharpened by experience. He once believed he deserved to soar without learning to stand. But here, leaning on cold railing, chest rising steady, he finally felt grounded enough to rise. His phone buzzed. A message from Emery. Warehouse efficiency reported. "Good work." Daniel stared at the text longer than necessary. She didn't offer praise. She recognized growth. "It mattered," he typed back. "Thank you. I'm trying. 3 dots. I see that." He smiled faintly, not with hope of rekindled love, but with quiet gratitude. She didn't know conversation. Yet she offered acknowledgement, which meant his effort was visible, if only as reflection of who he might become. Another message followed. "There will be a board review next month. If your progress continues, a project coordinator position may open." He inhaled slowly, not with entitlement, but with motivation. He wanted to earn it, not for title, not for her applause, for himself. He put his phone away, gazing over the city Emery led with grace. She did not destroy him. She revealed him. The man he was, the man he could be, the man he still deserved to become. Somewhere Alyssa texted again. Unread. Her voice no longer fueled him. It was growth now. Humility. Redemption earned one crate at a time. He turned toward home with sore legs and a steadier soul. Tomorrow he would show up again. Not as the man who lost everything, but as the man learning how to build. The board review date crept closer with every pallet lifted and every shift completed. Daniel found himself waking before dawn, not with dread, but with purpose that made the morning air taste different. Cleaner, sharper. He no longer rushed to beat others. He worked to better himself. A shift from ego to effort. Subtle but life-altering. The warehouse crew noticed. Reggie fist-bumped him one morning. "You move like you belong here now." Daniel grinned, breath clouding in early chill. "Maybe I finally do." Kellen overheard, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Belonging ain't enough. Leadership requires backbone." He paused long enough for the words to sink. "You got one yet, Hayes?" Daniel wiped sweat from his brow. "I'm earning one." Kellen nodded once. The closest thing to approval a man like him offered. Later that week, an emergency hit harder than the last. A conveyor malfunctioned mid-shift, sending crates careening off the belts, workers scrambling to dodge falling inventory. Panic exploded across the floor. A forklift skidded sideways, tires shrieking. Someone yelled. Someone fell. Daniel didn't think. He reacted. He sprinted toward the chaos, yanked the emergency shutoff, and dropped to help the fallen worker out from under a collapsed stack. His shirt tore, arms scraped. He barely noticed. Kellen shouted instructions, and Daniel echoed them, directing workers to clear space, stabilize equipment, reorganize salvage. Sweat soaked through his collar. His voice went hoarse from shouting orders that weren't orders. Guidance, cooperation, unity built on trust earned through labor, not rank. By the time emergency lights stopped flashing, the floor was safe, and everyone was staring at him, not like he was a fool, like he was a leader. Kellen approached slowly, hands clasped behind his back. You didn't freeze. You didn't panic. You thought of people first. He paused. That's leadership. Daniel swallowed hard. Praise weighed more now, once fed by ego, now absorbed by humility. He went home late with scraped arms and a strange warmth in his chest. He showered, cleaned his wounds, then sat at his small kitchen table, alone but no longer empty. His phone buzzed. From Emery. Incident report reached me. You stepped up. I'm proud of the progress you're making. Daniel stared at the words until his vision blurred. Not from pain, but from something breaking open inside him. He typed back with steady fingers. Thank you. I want to keep growing. Not for power, not for titles, for worth. 3 dots. You're becoming a man you weren't before. That matters more than any position. He held the phone to his chest, breathing deeply. She wasn't returning to him. That wasn't the story anymore. But she was witnessing his evolution, and somehow that was enough. Across the city, Emery stood on her penthouse balcony, phone in hand, skyline glittering beneath her. Lucas joined her quietly, offering a glass of wine. She accepted with a small nod. Daniel didn't see them. He didn't need to. He finally understood. Not every story ends with reunion. Some end with renewal. And he would meet the board not as a man entitled to rise, but as a man prepared to climb. The board review landed like thunder on the calendar. Daniel woke before sunrise, dressed not in the sharp suits he once wore with shallow pride, but in the best shirt he owned. Clean, pressed, simple. No arrogance, no perfume of ambition, just readiness. He took the bus instead of a company car. He sat in front, not to be seen, but to see. The city moved, breathed, lived around him. He once thought skyscrapers belonged to the powerful at the top. Now he understood they stood only because of the hundreds unseen beneath. When he entered Hayes Global HQ, employees who once glanced past him now nodded, not out of recognition, out of respect earned in sweat and sincerity. As he stepped off the elevator, Lucas waited in the corridor, posture straight, gaze sharp. You've changed, Lucas said, assessing him the way generals size soldiers. Daniel didn't flinch. I'm still changing. Lucas nodded. Approval subtle, but monumental. Inside the boardroom, Emery stood at the head of the table, dignified and calm. Her presence didn't intimidate him anymore. It grounded him. She wasn't a symbol of what he lost. She was a testament to what he could build. The directors took their seats. Papers rustled. Screens lit. The review began. A chart appeared showing warehouse efficiency improvements. Red turned to yellow. Yellow turned to green. The progress was undeniable. Small steps but earned. Directors murmured, curious, impressed. Emery looked to Daniel. Please present your report. His heart pounded, but not with fear, with purpose. He stepped forward. Hayes Global doesn't move because of board decisions. It moves because workers lift what leaders plan. I didn't know that before. I thought leadership was status, authority, but leadership is weight, carried, not worn. He spoke of system changes, workflow improvements, how he coordinated teams instead of commanding them. He recounted the crisis moments, not as heroism, but as proof of teamwork. He credited Reggie, Kellen, the warehouse crew by name. Every name mattered. The room listened, not to a demoted executive, but to a man who grew through humility. Emery's eyes softened, not with nostalgia, but with respect. One director raised a hand. Your proposal for an improved supply chain flow is solid. But tell us, what drives you now? Daniel inhaled. Responsibility, he said, not for power, for people. Silence followed. Heavy, full. A director leaned forward. I vote to grant him project coordinator. Another nodded. Seconded. Hands rose one by one, until only two remained. Lucas raised his last. Emery lifted hers next, slowly, deliberately, meeting Daniel's eyes with a quiet pride he once craved for the wrong reasons. The vote passed. Daniel Hayes, demoted, humbled, rebuilt, had risen one step, not to the top, just upward, where growth lives. When the meeting ended, Emery approached him. No return to what once was, no promise of love reborn, something different, maybe stronger. You earned this, she said. He smiled steady. Thank you for letting me fall. Her voice lowered, warm but firm. Some men break when they fall. You chose to stand. He nodded. I'm not the man who handed you divorce papers anymore. No, she agreed gently. You're becoming the man who understands what he nearly destroyed. There was no embrace, no kiss, just truth. And that was enough. Tomorrow he would begin as project coordinator, not because someone placed him there, because he climbed. Daniel arrived at the warehouse on his first day as project coordinator with a lunchbox instead of ego. Not because he couldn't afford convenience, but because he wanted to sit with the team he once overlooked. He shook hands. He asked questions. He listened. Reggie clapped him on the back like a brother, joking, Careful, man. Management suits look funny covered in dust. Daniel smiled. Then I'll stay dusty. They worked side by side implementing the new system. Label carts moved smoother, scanners synced faster, pallets flowed through the floor like blood through a healthy artery. Workers moved with pride, not because management demanded it, but because one of their own helped design it. Daniel didn't supervise from distance. He lifted crates with them, and every crate lifted, rebuilt something inside him. By noon, Emery arrived, not as CEO inspecting progress, as a witness. She walked through the floor quietly, eyes tracing efficiency like an artist studying form. Workers straightened instinctively, but Daniel motioned with his hand for them to continue. Respect didn't need stillness. It needed truth in motion. Emery met his gaze, subtle smile warming her features. No tension, no wounds needing salt, just two paths that once intersected, now parallel. Not colliding, not distant, but respectfully separate. She stood beside him near Conveyor 6. You built this, she said calmly. We built this, he corrected, nodding toward the crew. Reggie noticed her and jogged over with nervous pride. Mrs. Hayes, he works hard. Doesn't act like he's better than us. Emery turned to Daniel, eyes bright with something softer than forgiveness. Admiration. That means more than status ever could. A forklift beeped, reversing, as if punctuating her words. Daniel breathed deeply, the air rich with oil and sweat and purpose. You know, he said quietly, losing you wasn't the pain. Realizing I never deserved you was. She didn't flinch. She accepted it with grace. Pain grows people, Daniel. You chose growth. Lucas approached from behind, offering Emery a tablet. There was no jealousy, no bitterness from Daniel, only understanding. Lucas wasn't the man who replaced him. He was the man who matched her. Emery deserved someone at her height, not someone threatened by it. Daniel extended his hand to Lucas, not for approval, for respect. Lucas shook it firmly. Keep climbing. Don't stop here. I won't, Daniel said. Not a promise, a direction. As Emery and Lucas left, Daniel returned to work, rolling carts and laughing with the crew. He didn't watch her walk away. He didn't need to. The chapter had closed beautifully. Not torn, not burned, but placed gently on a shelf where memory rested instead of bleeding. Later, when dusk melted into the warehouse windows, Daniel stood on a loading dock watching trucks depart like veins carrying success into the world. He wasn't wealthy, not powerful, not reborn into privilege. He was rebuilding, crate by crate, choice by choice, breath by breath. He whispered into the cooling evening, I'm not done. I'm just beginning. And for the first time in his life, he meant it. He earned it. He deserved it. The man who once served divorce papers to a billionaire he didn't recognize had become something wealth could never buy. Accountable, humble, stronger than before. Not the king of a $70 billion empire, but the man worthy of building one.